So we're diving into this, well, pretty radical philosophy today. It claims it can create a million new millionaires.
Mhm.
And their goal, they're very clear, isn't just about piling up cash. It's about freedom, real financial freedom choices, good food, vacations.
Right, that lifestyle aspect.
Exactly. And the strategy at the heart of it all, the really disruptive one we're looking at, is called Buy, Borrow, Die, BBD.
Yeah.
It basically promises to teach you how the super rich legally manage to pay zero income tax.
It's a bold claim. And what's really striking about the source material is just how ambitious it is. It's not just tips. It's framed as a complete mindset overhaul.
A mission, almost.
Definitely. It wants you, the listener, to raise your financial IQ by questioning, well, pretty much everything you've been told about money.
Yeah, the core idea seems to be that the standard financial advice, it's, what's the word they use? Rigged.
Rigged, exactly. Rigged against the average person. And that the only way to really win financially is to play the same game the billionaires do.
So today we're going to break down the actual steps of BBD.
The mechanics, yeah.
Then we'll dig into this needed mindset shift, starting with how they define money itself, which is different.
Very different.
And finally, how this whole philosophy basically throws out the idea that you have to work for every dollar you spend.
Okay, sounds like a plan. Let's start with Buy, Borrow, Die itself. The source calls it the ultimate billionaire tax strategy.
Right, so it's a framework.
It's a framework, yeah.
Yeah.
A three-step cycle. And the entire focus is on legally avoiding, or at least deferring, any kind of taxable event.
Okay, let's walk through those steps. Step one is buy.
Step one, buy. Simple enough on the surface. You buy or you build assets. Things like stocks, real estate, maybe even whole companies, fortunes.
Okay.
The absolute core principle here is, as long as you never sell those assets, especially the ones that appreciate,
You don't pay capital gains tax.
bingo, you don't trigger that taxable event. So the goal becomes keeping your actual taxable income, like from a job, as low as you possibly can.
Got it. Hold assets, don't sell. What's step two?
Step two, borrow. Now, this is where the, let's say, legal magic happens according to the source.
Okay.
Instead of paying yourself a huge salary from your company, which, as you know, could get taxed at, what, up to 37%?
Yeah, not federal rate.
Right. Instead of doing that, you borrow money against the assets you bought in step one.
Oh.
And the key legal point they hammer home is that money you receive as a loan
Yeah.
isn't considered taxable income.
Right. Debt isn't income. Makes sense.
So the source gives this example. Taking a $10 million salary means a massive tax bill. But borrowing $10 million against your assets, that might only cost you, say, 3% in interest.
Huge difference. So you're funding your lifestyle with loan proceeds tax-free.
That's the idea. You live off the borrowed money.
Okay, but wait a minute. This sounds great if you're sitting on billions in stock. But for, a regular person trying this, isn't there massive risk?
How so?
Well, if you borrow a ton against your portfolio and then the market tanks, say, 30%, doesn't the bank just call the loan? You get a margin call, you're forced to sell assets at the worst time, and the whole BBD thing collapses. That seems like a huge danger.
That is a really critical question.
Mm-hmm.
And it points to the difference in how the wealthy structure this versus, say, a standard margin loan you might get from a broker.
Okay.
The source material really stresses that they use different tools. They get non-recourse loans or complex portfolio loans where the collateral is structured differently. It's not usually a simple margin account like most retail investors use.
So it's structured to handle volatility better.
Exactly. They build in buffers. Diversification is key. The loan-to-value ratios are often kept more conservative than you might think, and they're borrowing against a growth or appreciation, not necessarily leveraging the base value to the hilt. The goal is specifically to avoid those forced liquidation scenarios.
That distinction is vital. Okay, good. So that brings us to the last step. Step 3, die.
Step 3, die. Yeah, sounds a bit grim, but it's about the transfer of wealth.
How does that work tax-wise?
Well, under current U.S. law, and laws can change, of course, a married couple can pass on nearly $26 million completely tax-free to their heirs.
Wow, okay.
And they often use things like trusts, maybe foundations, to manage this. And critically, the assets typically get what's called a step-up in basis.
Pitch me.
It means the value of the asset, for tax purposes, resets to whatever its market value is at the time of death. So all those decades of built-up unrealized capital gains, poof, wiped out for the heirs.
So the heirs inherit at the new higher value, and if they sell it immediately, there's basically no capital gains tax.
Correct. And then the BBD cycle can just start all over again, potentially compounding wealth over generations, all while legally navigating around the income and capital gains tax systems.
Quite a system. And here's the really provocative part from the source.
Yeah.
They insist this isn't just for billionaires. They claim this strategy, which, interestingly, was apparently first detailed by a law professor, Edward McCaffrey, back in the 90s, is something anyone can do, if they learn how.
Yeah, but learning how means first you have to kind of unlearn everything else.
What do you mean?
Well, the speaker in the source material made a big point about this. Said they had to leave the traditional financial planning industry after like 15 years.
Why?
Because they realized that nobody they worked with, not the advisors, not the CPAs, actually knew how to structure things to retire really early or pay zero tax. The core argument is pretty blunt. The financial industry, they say, benefits from keeping you dependent, not truly educated on these kinds of strategies.
Okay, so BBD is the how, but adopting it requires a whole different way of thinking about money itself. Where does that start?
It starts with the absolute basics. What even is money?
Okay.
According to this philosophy, most people, maybe even most financial pros, don't actually grasp the true definition. They say money has to have three specific characteristics, which one, it's anything we collectively agree has value. Two, it has to be easily transferable. And three, this is the crucial one, it must have a limited supply.
Limited supply. Okay, and that's where they critique like regular currency.
Exactly. That third point is where they pivot hard against traditional banking and government issued or fiat currency. That $20 bill,
Yeah.
they call it fake money or even toilet paper money.
Huh.
Why? Because it has an unlimited supply, especially since 1971, when the U.S. went off the gold standard. The government can, theoretically, create as much as it wants.
Right. Just print more or add digital zeros.
Precisely. And anything with an unlimited supply, they argue, is basically designed to lose value over time through inflation.
Which is why step one of BBD, the buy step, is so focused on assets.
Yes, you must, in this view, only buy things that meet that limited supply rule. Things like, well, real estate, there's only so much land, maybe certain stocks of companies with strong moats, or
cryptocurrency.
Or certain cryptocurrencies, yeah. They specifically hold up things like Bitcoin because it has that hard programmed limit on the total number that can never exist. They argue it meets all three criteria. Agreed value, easy transfer, limited supply. Therefore, it's real money in their book.
Oh, yeah, that's a fundamental shift. What about the idea that we create money? The source mentions credit cards.
Yeah, this part is pretty eye-opening too. Did you know, or does the average person realize, that something like 90% of the world's money supply isn't physical cash? It's just digital entries created by pressing buttons.
Oh.
And the credit card example they use is powerful. You go buy, say, a new TV for $2,000 at Costco. You swipe your credit card.
Right.
In that instant, $2,000 of new digital money is essentially created out of thin air. Your credit line expands, the bank credits Costco's account. New money exists that didn't exist the second before.
Okay, I see that. And who actually benefits from that transaction?
Well, think about it. Costco, the retailer, gets paid. LG, the manufacturer, gets their share. The bank makes money on swipe fees.
And potentially huge interest, like 24, 29%, on money they never actually had to physically lend out.
Exactly. And don't forget, the government, they get sales tax, income tax from the companies involved. It's a massive flow of wealth creation.
So the point the source is making is...
The point is that you, the consumer, the person swiping the card, are constantly creating money every single day through commerce. But right now, the way the system is set up, you're creating it mostly to make other families, big banks, and the government richer.
Ah.
The whole goal of this BBD philosophy, then, is learning how to flip that. Structure your finances so that you are creating money primarily to make your own family wealthy.
Okay, so how does an ordinary American, as they put it, actually start doing this? It sounds like it requires capital.
It does, but they emphasize using other people's money OPM. That's the key concept for scaling up.
Using borrowed funds, essentially.
Yes, using institutional capital, loans, leverage, not just your own hard-earned savings, to acquire the assets needed for what they call the perfect portfolio.
And this perfect portfolio, what's in it?
They list 5 pillars of wealth. You use OPM to build positions in these areas. Pillar 1 is business ownership. Often, they mean passive real estate investing here.
Okay.
Pillar 2, stocks and ETFs. And they do say you can start small here, even with just $100 to get going.
Right.
Pillar 3, protection. This is interesting. They mean investments that, quote, can only go up. Usually they're talking about specific insurance products like indexed universal life, IUL, for downside protection and tax advantages.
Okay, we should probably unpack that IUL bit a little. When they say protection using IUL, it's not just about the death benefit, is it?
No, not primarily in this context. They focus on the cash value component within the IUL policy.
Right.
This cash value can grow, often linked to a market index like the S&P 500. But, and this is the protection part, it typically has a floor, usually 0%, meaning you don't lose money in down years. So you get potential upside participation with downside protection.
And crucially, how does it fit BBD?
Crucially, you can borrow against that cash value, usually tax-free. That becomes a source for the borrow step, funding lifestyle or other investments without triggering taxes. The tax advantage savings and borrowing vehicle, essentially.
Got it. So that's pillar 3. What are the last 2?
Pillar 4 is cryptocurrency, and pillar 5 is precious metals like gold and silver. So a diversified mix across these 5 areas, funded largely by OPM.
And the borrowing part is where it really clicks into place. The source speaker shared a personal example, right? Borrowing from their own portfolio.
Yeah, a very specific example. They showed how they borrowed $81,730.14, just like press the borrow button on their phone app within their brokerage account.
Wow. And the terms.
This is the kicker. No application needed, no credit check, no required monthly payments back, and most importantly, the $81,000 was not taxable income.
That's the BBD principle right there.
Exactly. And they break down the math to show why it works for them. The interest rate on that loan was, say, 5.25%, but the assets in the portfolio that secured the loan were generating estimated income, dividends, interest, etc., of about $5,260 per month.
Okay, and the interest cost?
The monthly interest payment on the loan was only around $343. So the income being generated was more than 10 times the cost of the loan.
So the assets pay for the loan used to live on, and the loan itself was tax-free.
That's the core application. Create money tax-free without working for it in the traditional sense, and use it to acquire more assets or fund your life, effectively beating inflation.
80 grand, zero tax, no required payments. That's genuinely staggering. But again, for someone starting out, how much do you need in that portfolio and those 5 pillars before that kind of borrow button even becomes available? Is it just for high net worth people?
It's definitely tied to the net value of the collateral in your portfolio. It's not based on your income or credit score in the same way as a typical loan. That's why building those 5 pillars is the prerequisite. Once you have a sufficiently large and diversified base of assets, especially assets structured for this kind of borrowing, like the IUL cash value or certain non-margin brokerage assets, then you unlock the ability to tap into that OPM relatively easily.
And the key is having assets that throw off enough income or reliably appreciate enough to easily cover the interest.
Yes, that positive cash flow or growth spread, like in the $81,000 example, is what makes the strategy sustainable according to the source. It's not just about borrowing, it's about borrowing smartly against productive assets.
Which means, really, you have to challenge almost everything you've likely learned about personal finance.
Completely. The source is very direct about this, calling standard financial education more like financial indoctrination.
Strong words.
Very. They go so far as to label common advice, things like diligently saving money in the bank, maxing out your 401k, or trying to pay off your mortgage as quickly as possible as, quote, a lie and a scam perpetuated by Wall Street.
Wow. Paying off your house early is a scam. That's counterintuitive.
Extremely. But this is a really crucial, if controversial, point they make.
Okay, explain their reasoning.
They argue that when you send extra principal payments to your mortgage lender, you're essentially killing that money. It becomes debt equity locked up in your house, unable to be invested in other assets that could potentially grow much faster.
Instead of using it to buy more assets in those 5 pillars.
Precisely. And furthermore, they point out, by paying down your mortgage aggressively, you reduce your mortgage interest deduction each year.
Right. Less interest paid means less to deduct.
Which means you voluntarily push yourself into a higher effective tax bracket year after year.
Huh. Never thought of it that way.
Whereas the wealthy, they argue, do the opposite. They see debt, especially relatively low-interest mortgage debt, as a tool. They use it to acquire more income-producing or appreciating assets. They almost never try to pay off good debt ahead of schedule.
So keep the mortgage, keep the deduction, and use any extra cash flow to buy more assets that you can then borrow against. It's a totally different mindset.
It really is. It frames debt not as something inherently bad to be eliminated, but as a powerful lever if used correctly against the right assets.
Okay, so this whole deep dive really boils down to a fundamental choice, doesn't it?
Seems like it.
You can either keep recycling the financial information you've always had, the traditional advice,
Which, the source argues, tends to lead to being dependent on jobs, banks, and government programs.
or you embrace this new, maybe uncomfortable information about BBD, OPM, and redefining money.
Which, they promise, is the path to actual financial freedom, tax efficiency, and generational wealth.
Yeah, and connecting it all back, the source had that quote about thinking.
Right. Thinking is just a recycling of the data you've gathered in the past.
So the implication is,
The implication is, if you've been following the traditional playbook for years, and the results are maybe high taxes, lots of consumer debt, feeling stuck, then maybe that old data isn't serving you.
you need new data.
You need to, as they put it, dump the old information and get new information. Be willing to learn a completely different way.
Which leads us to that final, pretty provocative question for you, the listener, to chew on. If you don't take full responsibility for your own financial education, for your family's financial future, and potentially explore strategies like this, who will?
Yeah. Because the alternative, at least according to the source material we've unpacked,
The alternative is you just remain the OP, the other person in everyone else's money game. You're the one creating the wealth for others.
a powerful thought to end on.